All right. Hello, welcome to the City of Carpinteria's Local Hazard Mitigation Plan Update Public Workshop. It is February 1st, and we're recording a meeting to present to the public. So for our agenda today, I will be introducing the team really quickly. I'll give a brief overview of the project, and we'll talk about the capabilities of the city. I'll show you the hazard prioritization, the hazards that we've ranked for the city based on what hazards impact the city the most. And then we'll give a brief example of mitigation opportunities so that we can get ideas from you, the public, for mitigations that would help mitigate hazards in the city. All right, next slide. So our project team is Olivia from the city. Olivia, would you like to introduce yourself really quick?
Thank you. My name is Olivia Uribe Mutel, and I am project manager. Part of the responsibilities that I have include emergency services and outreach and volunteer services at the city.
Thank you, Olivia. Our project manager for the consulting team working with the city is Erica Leachman. I am Sydney Margallo. I'm the deputy project manager and lead planner for this project. And we also have Gina Sawaya on the call, who will be helping present a few slides. So the main goal of the project is to update the local hazard mitigation plan in accordance with FEMA and Cal OES, that's the California Office of Emergency Services, requirements so that the plan can be approved and updated, and the city can receive funding from those agencies to implement hazard mitigations. In this 2022 update, we want to focus primarily on new hazard events that have occurred in the last 5 years and were not included in the 2017 plan. For example, the flooding at Carpinteria Creek during the 2018 mud flows after the Thomas Fire caused damage to the retaining wall at the wastewater treatment plant and also shut down multiple parts of Highway 101, which left the city isolated from communities both to the north and the south. So we'll discuss this event and events like these that have occurred recently in our plan, and I will also want to discuss any lessons learned from these hazard events and how they were responded to or what could have prevented damage. All right. So this hazard prioritization is based on input from the city as well as from the Mitigation Advisory Committee and local planning teams that were a part of putting together and preparing the county's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. So this list is consistent with the prioritization of hazards in the county's hazard mitigation plan, but it only includes hazards that are applicable to the city and does not include all of the hazards that were identified in the countywide plan. For example, this might include hailstorm, tornado, hurricane, things like that. So the city is in the process of prioritizing these hazards based on how they might affect the city in particular rather than the entire county. And the city would also like to gain the public's input on ranking these hazards if possible.
Hi, this is Gina. I'm going to help you learn about the vulnerability assessment. So the reason we do a vulnerability assessment is to help understand where the hazards are in our communities and overlay them with critical structures that we want to protect, like critical infrastructure, ways to get in and out of the cities, and things that are essential for our communities. So what we did was create a map of hazards and with the critical facilities marked, so we can get a sense of where the hazards will be the most impactful. We also started to evaluate the value of those structures, potential losses, what communities could be affected, and how all of these things are amplified by climate change. One of the biggest differences between this plan and our 2017 plan was how we are considering climate change as we look at all these vulnerabilities. So we're just going to go over a few maps to show you a couple of the hazards in Carpinteria. Here's a map showing the fire hazard severity zones in the city of Carpinteria. The red color are high, very high fire hazard severity zones. Orange are high areas, yellow is moderate, and the green are urban areas or non-wild and non-urban areas. And you should note that much of this red area burned in the Thomas fire in 2018. Also, what's interesting about a fire map is how it interplays with other hazards. So after a fire, the vegetation is gone and a lot of the soils are a lot looser, which can lead to debris flows, which we'll show you a map of in the next slide. So notice that here is the Thomas fire, and then here right below it were all the areas that were at risk of debris flows, especially in these areas on slopes and areas right beneath burn zones, leading right down into the lowland areas and out to the beaches. This is something that's new from the 2017 study, and is something that the county and the city are looking at more closely in this plan as we understand the causes and effects of debris flows better.
All right, thank you, Gina. So to plan for mitigation for the city, we wanted to start by understanding the city's mitigation capabilities. So we're currently working to establish an inventory of the city's existing and proposed plans, policies, and programs. And then these are then reviewed to see if there are any gaps or places for improvement that may help to reduce potential impacts from these hazards. Finally, the city's technical and fiscal capabilities are considered to identify what sources of funding and actions can be done to improve the community safety. And pooling the resources and collaboration of the stakeholders of the city and the public helps to create a plan that's consistent and complementary with the local hazard mitigation plan and achievable for the city. Next slide. Thank you. All right. So an example hazard that we want to present to you is sea level rise, which is already a problem in the city. So the sea level rise vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan uses, that was adopted by the city, or sorry, is published for the city, uses 5 feet by 2100 as the reasonable worst case scenario for planning purposes. This could result in damages to infrastructure within the city, especially along the coast, such as utilities, coastal development, and coastal access and recreational resources. So an example mitigation strategy that we have to present to you to address the example hazard of sea level rise and coastal hazards is the Carpinteria Living Shoreline project. So coastal hazards modeling of projected sea level rise along the Carpinteria coastline indicates a potential for flooding and coastal erosion that will affect city infrastructure and private property along the coastline of the city. So with this in mind, there are a series of goals for this project intended to reduce impacts and protect city infrastructure and local properties. And it's important to note that while sea level rise is projected over the next 80 to 100 years, this specific project is intended to provide a short to mid-term protection of city resources and the beach from sea level rise. So this is a good mitigation strategy that would be used to address vulnerabilities from sea level rise. So this is our project timeline. The data collection for the assessment of hazards and vulnerabilities was primarily completed in 2021 in coordination with our preparation for the countywide multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. This month, we've been reaching out to the stakeholders and to you, the public, to glean some ideas for what hazards are important to the city, as well as what mitigation opportunities the city should consider in their plan. In February, we'll be wrapping up our draft plan, the draft local hazard mitigation plan. And the plan will be submitted to Cal OES and FEMA, along with the countywide multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan and the other annexes, appendices of the county's plan at the end of March. So with that, I'd like to ask everyone watching to please submit any comments, questions, or ideas for mitigation by Friday, February 11th to either Olivia, Erica Leachman's email, or my email at the bottom there. Thank you all so much for watching, and we hope to hear from you.